Hello and welcome to the Chris Wolf Podcast on iCode Media. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to highlight the best of conversations that we've had in 2022 based on the most downloaded episodes related to private equity and cold starts. There are 3 snippets from 3 different conversations, one with Dr. Chad Fleming, one with Dr. Eric Baas and Rob Steinmetz, and one with Adam Cmejla. And so if you want to listen to the entire episode, we will put those episodes in the links for today's show notes. You can go back and listen to them as you'd like to if you haven't heard them or if you are a new subscriber. As always, please enjoy our conversations. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, write a review, share it with your friends, and support those who support us. Challenging things with patients is when they invest in a really high quality pair of glasses and customized lenses, it can be challenging to keep those lenses clean, keep them scratch free, smudge free. And so we now have the ability with Crizal Sapphire HR lenses to offer our patients the best in class anti-reflective coating in a way that is really high resistance so that they're not having to care for their lenses as much as when those lenses are caring for them. So remember that you can provide patients that best in quality, best in class transparency, clarity, durability, and UV protection in a single Crizal coating. If you want to learn more about Crizal Sapphire HR, contact your Essilor account executive or visit essilorpro.com/Crizal. You know, I get questions all the time about how do we use 9.2 codes and 9.9 codes and which ICD codes go with different CPT codes and what can be billed together and what can't. And this confusion, this uncertainty really holds us back oftentimes to be able to do what we want to do, which is help our patients see clearly and provide their best opportunity for a lifelong vision. And so we built iCode Education for that specific purpose. We have lots of resources that are based in helping you understand disease states, helping you understand revenue cycles and billing and coding practices. So check out iCodeEducation.com. That's EYECODE education.com. And we have a specific bundle there for you if you'd like to take advantage of it. It's the Premier Billing and Coding Bundle. We've got a 10% discount code just for listeners of this show. You can just, in the coupon code at checkout, you can enter in iCode Media 22. That's EYECODE MEDIA 22 at checkout. We'd love to have you. We'd love to work with you. Check out iCodeEducation.com.
And I think there's a mistake that a lot of smaller practices make that it sounds like you haven't. You've started to bring in associates. Everybody looks at you bring in an associate and you make so much less. But I would argue the flip side of that, if you understand investing, you understand how the system works, you can actually grow a system such that you can be, if later on in life you just want to manage the practice and have an investment just like you would real estate, you can do that in providing jobs for doctors and letting them have some autonomy themselves. And you can also make a nice income for the risks you take. Plus, if you do the math on it and you make wise investments now, you're going to be farther ahead. I look at it, if we just have an asset fire sale in 10, 15 years, and I've done this and invested wisely, not increased my living. I mean, if I'm going out and I'm making more money and I'm increasing my living, that's a whole nother story. Then I am going to end up with nothing. But if you do it wisely, you can end up and you don't even have to sell it for a whole lot. And you're still ahead and you've still called the shots. And it's not a selfish, me-driven of why I want to call the shots. It's the freedom of what that brings when I come home to my family and how I live and the stress or anxiety that I live under if I get to call the shots.
Yeah, no, I think the idea of, you made the point of, you work for a big organization, you're answerable to not just your patients, but to the board, to your board. And clearly, you've got multiple different entities. And I think a lot of people would say like, well, Chad, how do you do all the things you do? And how are you have all the flexibility with your family? But the thing is that you get to call the shots on it, right? Like you're a practice owner and you own, consulting, and I guess you could probably, and GPO companies. And so there's multiple irons in the fire, but if you say today we're done, I'm done. 5 o'clock, I'm done. or I'm not seeing patients on this day, so I can run around with the kids in the morning, or maybe today's the day I work from home. Like today is the day on Thursday that I work from home. Most Thursdays I've got time. I can hang out with my kids, in the middle of the day during summer. And so like, yeah, you've got a lot of stuff going on where you might be logging in to do some work. Maybe you're not like me, but you might be logging in at 6 o'clock to do some work, or in the morning, or, 10 o'clock at night sometimes. But that gives you the ability to choose when you're doing those things, and you get to be the master of those decisions. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. We can leave for the weekend in the summertime. We can leave on a Thursday evening, and I can do my work while we're traveling. We go down to my parents' house in Arkansas, and I can work Friday morning because I'm remote. And it's not not wanting to work. It's just working in your own space and having, again, that autonomy to have that freedom to work when kids are in bed or something else, so you can focus on what your values are. I think it's having the margin and having the freedom to schedule your values.
Is there sort of like this underlying pride for private practice and the strength of the profession kind of hinging on that private practice that drives you at all?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think, this all goes back to when I was a student, and, we've had a lot of external threats over the years, I think, that have kind of evolved, just in the last 15 years. When you look at it, when I was president of the Student Association, I was bothered by the fact that all of the solicitations I got in the mail were from very large corporate conglomerates that were attempting to be able to hire these graduates right out of school with maybe a little bit of misinformation and throwing a significant amount of money at them, basically stating that private practice is dead and that commercial optometry is kind of taking over, and this is really your only option. And so, my goal as a student was to prove that, it could be done, that you could go out and start your own private practice, and you can do it with very little money. I had the third highest loan debt in my class, and went out and did it in a very small space, knowing that I was going to grow it, beyond what it was initially. And so you look at that over time, and at the same time, we were going through some of the battles that, you fought and others have fought in other states of, acquiring oral medications and kindergarten examination laws. And so optometry was continuing to evolve into this more medical-based profession. And so, part of what we were doing is, and Eric as well, was proving that it can be done. No one thought it could be done, that you could just open up cold right out of school without an angel investor or, being personally wealthy. And so part of our early mission was just to prove that you could actually do it. And I think once we proved that, everything exploded from there. And to be honest with you, private equity has become so aggressive. It's become, one, a huge pipeline for clients to be feeding in to wanting to cold start because they understand what kind of culture that is within private equity, no matter how they try to spin it. So that has been fantastic for us because we get to define that competition. But two, you would actually be shocked at how many of our clients in year 2 and 3 are being approached by private equity to actually acquire their practices because they grow so quickly. And so it's a phenomenal position to be in right now, I think. Originally, when we thought there was a threat, we looked at it as an opportunity. And so I think a lot of our clients have realized the same thing.
Today I want to talk about the MyDay multifocal for just a second. It has been a really great thing in our practice for our patients who are presbyopes of all areas, but those tricky presbyopes are always the ones that are kind of emerging, where they don't want to give up any of their faraway vision, but they're having some struggles up close. And so what the MyDay multifocal has been able to do for us is to allow those patients to transition into a multifocal more easily. And then as we have those patients progress into other levels where they need more ad powers, it's been a nice, smooth transition. So the ultimate hurdle that we've seen in our practice before the MyDay multifocal was that we'd have patients who would resist any transition to a multifocal lens because of that distance blur. We just haven't seen that. So if you haven't started using MyDay multifocal in your practice, I would encourage you to start. Check it out. Reach out to your Cooper reps for those trial lenses and commit to MyDay multifocal for your patients. I think they're going to like it. if you haven't checked out MacuHealth yet for your patients in category 1 through category 4, I think there's a lot of evidence that you should be considering. The first is if we just look at AREDS 2 and what they talk about, MacuHealth is, so for patients in category 3 and category 4 AMD, MacuHealth is a great option for them that follows that entire protocol, and it also adds mesozeaxanthine to the mix, which if you look at some of the evidence, I believe shows me that it's going to thicken the macular pigment better than without mesozeaxanthine. It also uses the correct AREDS 2 dose of zinc at 25 milligrams, and so you don't have to worry so much about the potential side effects of zinc. The other thing to think about, and it's beyond the scope of this, although you've probably heard me talk on other podcasts, is that in patients in category 1 and 2, there may be some additional benefit to supplementing them with something that may be a little bit less than the AREDS 2, so you don't have to add as much to it. And that's where I use the MacuHealth LMZ3. And so I think if you haven't done this yet, I'd consider MacuHealth in your practice and for your patients. And it's been great for my patients, and we really feel like we have the ability to help those patients in all categories of macular degeneration.
I have not worked on a deal where an OD has been able to quite literally hand over the keys, cash that check, and walk away. I forget who I was talking to. They couldn't describe the details of the deal, which tells me it was partly maybe a game of telephone, and you know how things sometimes get lost in translation. And maybe there is a private equity deal out there where you got an incredible valuation, relatively speaking, to what we're all used to seeing, 60% of gross, 3.4 times EBITDA, right, et cetera, in a OD to OD private sale. But the vast majority of deals are going to include a 3-year holdback where two things. A, you're expected to work, and quite literally part of the valuation that you got is predicated upon you staying in the practice to essentially bridge the gap and pass the proverbial baton from yourself as the owner to whoever is going to be in your place post leaving. And this is assuming you're going to exit after 3 years, where you're going to exit stage left, move off into the sunset. So there's that 3-year holdback. Part of that deal that you get, part of the value of the practice is going to be held essentially kind of in escrow, so to speak. And you're going to earn typically 15% of your gross collections. That is by and large the number that private equity will use, which is why in my article, I use that as well, because the OD, when you, again, thinking of it, how much you're harvesting out of the practice is in 2 ways. And I assigned 15% to the OD salary and then a 15% operating income. So you're working in the practice for those 3 years, but you're not able to take the net operating income that goes to private equity now.
And so to say that another way, you'd say $150,000 in $1 million practice, $150,000 as the doctor.
Correct.
And in EBITDA, to make it simple, $150,000 in EBITDA. Okay.
Yes.
And so when they talk about let's just say, to make it simple, a 10x multiple, that means they'll pay you for your $1 million a year practice. They'll pay you $1.5 million.
1.5, correct.
To your again, to use round numbers, they will give you upfront
60%
60 to 70%. Okay, so 60. Let's say just to make it easy, 66.6667%. So you get $1 million up front. They're going to hold back 500,000. When they hold back the 500,000, do you get any growth on that generally, or it's just being held for 3 years and then you get it, or 5 years? Generally being
held in a non-interest bearing account. There's not really any growth on that, so to speak.
Okay. So let's say then it is 3 years. Essentially what you're doing is you're turning yourself into an employee for that 3 years and $150,000, stagnant, no growth at all. And worst case would be you have growth, and then you're basically taking 3 years. So you get the $1 million. Wonderful. I take it off the table. But then I got to work in the practice for 3 years at the same salary as I was as a salary. But then I get $450,000 as an owner if I have no growth at all. If I were the owner of that practice, I would be out. That 3 years would be another $450,000 in my practice, which I can't get until I do the 3 years, and maybe I get a little piece, the $50,000 on top.
Correct.
We're all square?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We're all square.
Okay. And so Now play that out when in your math, you show how if I had just waited that 3 years, et cetera, kind of play that out over time.
Yeah. So to use your same example there, if we have a 30% optometric net, right? Because to your numbers, we use $1 million practice. The OD, we have an EBITDA of 150,000, 15%. We have OD salary of 150,000. So those two numbers combined in a solo OD practice is what we would call the optometric net. It's the total compensation paid to optometrists plus business income. So the optometric net of the practice in this situation is 30%. If we own that practice for those 3 years, we have, and again, to your point, we have no inflation adjustments or no practice growth. We'll just keep the math the same. So we've got $300,000 a year times 3 years. We've got $900,000 of total free cash flow that we brought home. And we still have the enterprise value of $1 million practice at the end of that 3 years. And so now if we go and we sell, so we've had $900,000 of total cash flow that we've harvested out of the practice by owning the practice for those same 3 years. And we still own the enterprise value of $1 million practice at $150,000 EBITDA at, let's just say you get a 4.5 multiple on a practice like that to private seller. Now you got $675,000 in essential enterprise value of a sale of an asset to an OD. So we've got 675 plus 900,000, right? We've got $1.575 million, which is kind of very close to that $1.5 million that we sold in private equity.
That was at a 10x multiple. That was at a 10x multiple, not a 7 or 8 that we're probably getting.